Under the night sky, an irritated shout echoed from the apartment. Damn it! Inside Shu fiercely clicks his controller, fully immersed in the video game before him. More Sheet of Shu is shocked, not understanding why such a powerful monster appeared in this area. He was just one step away from completing the quest to collect materials, when suddenly he was defeated. He laments in despair. The needed rare material did not even drop from the monster. Suddenly, a message flashed on the screen, reflected in the lenses of his glasses. A deafening cry of pure joy burst from his house, making the window panes tremble. Memories of a cheerful girl and a kind woman flashed through his mind. The world around him warped, and he suddenly completely lost his balance. He spins and falls into some abstract void and cannot comprehend. Where on earth is he? He lands, clutching his head with his hands, trying to piece together that impossible sequence of events. A calm voice greeted him, and he shuddered in surprise, frightened by the shining divine figure. He stammeringly asks who this person is, and a terrible thought runs through his mind. The figure smiles and says that he will speak in a way that he can easily understand. They introduce themselves as God, a version from another world, not his own. Shu clenches his fist and asks if this means that he really died. The confirmation of his death instantly shattered his composure into pieces. He shouts that it is not true. He cannot come to terms with the fact that his life ended so suddenly and prematurely. What torments him the most is that he never finished collecting materials in all his favorite games. God listens with a playful smile and says that he passionately loves collecting. She recalls his passion that has accompanied him all his life, from the very first childhood memories. Even as an adult, his passion did not subside. He neglected storylines for the sharp pleasure of collecting. He remembers how long he grinded for rare items, for example, for the legendary lotus berry from Rhodobagos Island. His eyes sparkle with joy, just at the thought of the legends hidden behind these digital treasures. He imagined with excitement how these fantastic items were used in their game worlds. He scratches his head, wondering why he loves collecting so much. God makes an attempt and suggests reincarnating and gathering materials, as much as his heart desires. The sudden incredible offer left her speechless. She froze in complete confusion. He asks what God means, and the deity begins to explain the situation. God points a finger and says that he was summoned to be sent to another world. She froze from the revelation. The truth of the situation finally reached her. He instantly recognizes the popular trope about reincarnation here, and it slightly annoys the deity. God says that sometimes he makes mistakes when sending magic, and because of this, the fragile balance of the world is disturbed. Pointing at Shu, the deity loudly declared that this is where he comes into play. His body will be transformed into a living channel through which magic will slowly penetrate the world. God gently assures him his new body will be strong and will not suffer any harm. She froze for a moment, trying to comprehend the incredible information he had received. Finally, he uttered the most important question. Why was he chosen? The deity's eyes crinkled into a gentle, knowing smile, and it began to explain. His soul crackled with the energy of passion, making his shoes apologize for it. The god leans in conspiratorially, offering him valuable insider information. This new world simply teems with magical rare materials that he loves to collect. The offer was almost too good to be true. It was a second chance to do what he truly loved. Although a slight unease flashed inside, the opportunity was too tempting to ignore. He decides to stake his new life on his greatest passion, collecting materials. He raises his gaze, resolutely determined, and tells the god that he understands. Filled with new determination, he officially requests to be transferred to another world. The god smiles, pleased with his decision, and thanks him for his cooperation. The deity sincerely wishes him luck in future expeditions for materials. The transition begins. His consciousness slowly fades, retreating from the etheric void. He catches himself thinking whether it was a dream, but he feels he was truly transferred. He found himself in a new world, a place breathing with endless possibilities. With a sharp inhale, he suddenly woke up under a tree next to a babbling brook. He crawls to the water's edge, coughs, and decides to drink to calm down a bit. He notices his reflection in the water, and is shocked by what he sees. He looks significantly younger, like a teenager, and is dressed in unfamiliar but practical clothes. He is convinced that his youthful appearance is part of the strong body that God gave him. Suddenly he realizes God cared and placed him near a life-giving water source. Reality finally dawns on him. He really ended up in another world. A sincere, heartfelt smile blooms on his face as he takes it all in. A wave of excitement and determination swept inside. He clenches his fist, ready to begin. He loudly announces the start of his new life, the life of a material collector in another world. However, his first burst of enthusiasm immediately encounters a practical problem. He stands in the middle of an endless meadow and does not know where to go at all. He decides that first of all he needs to secure a source of fresh water for himself. He freezes by the stream, hesitating whether he can drink this water. He worries that he will have to boil or purify it, and suddenly something strange happens. A window with text suddenly appeared in his head. Water is safe to drink. It revived in memory how God said they would grant him a special ability so he could survive. In a flashback, God explains that he will give him power for this new world. The deity asked if he wished to receive some special ability. Shu asked which world he was being sent to. God explained that it was similar to those games he played until his death. A dangerous fantasy world with magic, monsters, and many tempting materials. The thought of new materials made him blush with excitement. He processed this information. Before him stood a world of swords and sorcery, a true fantasy land. He feared that as a simple office worker without combat skills, he would not survive. God, sensing his anxiety, promised to give him a power that would help. He asked for the power to live a slow life in peace and quiet, gathering materials and enjoying it. He begged for a way to sense danger to avoid game over. God understood his request to live measuredly, in peace, gathering material goods. They agreed to give him enough power so that he would not die immediately. God called us. We are modest but greedy and somewhat fond of luxury. He understands. This must be the power God gave him, his own unique ability. Trusting the message from the heavens, he takes a deep sip from the river. The water was ice-fresh, clean, and incredibly tasty. A real shock for him. He savoringly tastes and wonders, what has he been drinking all his life? He decides that he must find a way to carry this incredible water with him. He remembers his bag and hopefully thinks that God put a water skin or something similar there. He slips his hand into the small leather pouch on his hip, feeling its contents. He is shocked by the depth of the bag and realizes it is stuffed with a bunch of things. He displays the impossible haul. Tools, food, money, a sword, and much more. He smiled slyly, realizing that this little pouch clearly holds more than it should by its volume. He decides to open and read the sealed letter from God to understand his new equipment. The letter explains, in the magical pouch is a compressed space where time has stopped. He continues reading, his heart pounding with excitement, marveling at what other incredible abilities he has been given. He suddenly learns that he has two skills: praisal, for obtaining information, and survey, for searching materials. He suddenly realizes his ability to evaluate hinted that the water in the river is safe. Excited, he immediately decides to test his unique ability to explore. He imagines how waves of magic spread around, like ripples on the surface of the water. Shu took a deep breath, focused, and prepared to use his new power. He stood alone in the endless open field, ready to begin his survey. The wind whispered through the tall blades of grass surrounding him. Under the surface of the stream, fish swam in the clear, cool water. On the tip of a leaf clung a single perfect drop of dew. The whole world held its breath as the drop fell. A moment of complete concentration. His eyes snapped open. With one word, he unleashed his power. Survey! He held his breath in awe, wondering what it was. A mushroom nearby glowed with a soft ethereal light, like a hidden treasure. The root peeking out of the ground also shimmered with mysterious energy. The entire landscape was now dotted with dozens of these flickering lights. He froze, stunned, asking himself, could all this really be materials? A broad, greedy smile blossomed on his face, the joy of a true collector. He decided to check the nearest spot of light and immediately rushed toward it. He approached the place, and suddenly noticed a strange, fluffy flower in the grass. He wondered if this beautiful flower could be of any use. He suddenly realized it was time to use his other skill, praisal. A text window appeared in his mind and named the plant Azami thistle. He stood still in amazement. It was a healing herb, and he knew how to gather it. The evaluation even suggested the exact spot on the root from which to extract it. A deep, happy smile lit up his face. He felt a strong connection. He was delighted. Finally, he could gather materials with his own hands. He warmly pressed the jar to himself and said that Azami thistle was his first official penalty. Admiring his reward, suddenly a thought flashed through his mind. He remembered how God called his desire to live slowly and simply brave. He realized his two skills were like a cheating aid for gathering. He carefully closed the jar and firmly decided to be modest and not take foolish risks. He adjusted his backpack, and he felt ready to move on to the next goal. He recalled, the river should lead him to the village of Fair Mill, his logical destination. He took one step toward the village, and suddenly froze in place. A mischievous smile appeared on his face as he pondered. But before that, he ran away, shouting that he could not possibly leave all those materials behind. A little later, he was breathing heavily under the shade of the trees. He was completely out of breath after a wild, passionate urge to gather things. He collapsed, surrounded by his haul, admitting that he got too carried away. He looked admiringly at his magical bag, which held everything in a row and did not get heavier by a gram. He thought critically, and realized that his current method was too vague. Countless lights were so blinding that it was hard to concentrate. How much he wanted to narrow the search to more specific targets. He decided to try to narrow the search by testing the limits of his skills. He focused his will, purposefully searching for the material Wagner's fang. Everything worked perfectly. He was glad at how easily the targeted search went. He saw that the targets were very close and felt not to take them would be a waste. Watching the signals, he suddenly noticed something strange in their behavior. He noticed that the lights were barely moving and wondered what it could mean. Suddenly he realized the source of the signals was just behind the tall grass. His eyes opened wide sharply, and suddenly horror hit him as he understood. He quickly activated the assessment skill, and desperate panic overwhelmed him. A small portrait flashed through his mind. He recognized the creature as Wagner. He looked out from behind the grass and in the distance noticed the sharp ears of monsters. He instantly ducked down again, his heart pounding wildly in his chest. He was alarmed, but felt relief when he realized that his scan had revealed a living monster. He understood. If he stayed away from the moving lights, the monsters would not get him. He clenched his fist and thanked God for such a universal and useful skill. He decided that the real time had come to head to the village before it got dark. But as he stood, a dazzling flash of light from afar struck his eyes. He shuddered at the sudden appearance of bright golden light. He wondered, could that distant beacon of light also be matter? He argued with himself, knowing it was already late and he had to go. The collector's instinct prevailed, and he ran away, promising this was the last. He remembered that the other lights were blue and violet, and he was intrigued by the difference in colors. In the distance, the golden light pulsed, emitting strong, captivating energy. He approached closer. His face radiated focused anticipation and excitement. He pushed himself forward, repeating to himself, "Almost there." He arrived and saw in the clearing a large, smooth object lying and quietly glowing. He swallowed deeply, eyes wide with admiration, looking at that beautiful thing. He stretched out trembling hands and whispered how beautiful it was. Lifting it, he was surprised to feel how light it was and how it sparkled. He raised it to the light and noticed how it shimmered like a mirror. His heart was pounding wildly, and he activated the appraisal skill. And then the information appeared. The legendary scale of the red dragon. He jumped back in shock and shouted for the whole world to wait just a moment. He imagined a terrifying dragon because he knew such items were always closely guarded. In panic, he instantly used the inspection skill to find another scale. The forest froze in dead silence. No other signal appeared. He sighed long and trembling with relief, wiping sweat from his forehead. He decided it must have been some special bonus for the first entry. A gift from God himself. He paused for a moment, piecing together parts of his discovery. He guessed that the color of the light indicated how rare the material was. He sat on the grass and held the incredible dragon scale in his palms. A broad, joyful smile blossomed on his face as he admired his new treasure. He stood up, feeling satisfaction, and was finally ready to set off for the village. In the distance, he saw the global city of Firmal, and his heart filled with admiration. He would finally get there. As he approached civilization, his face shone with sincere admiration. He reached the main gates and shouted that he had finally arrived. He froze, his heart pounding at the thought of his first meeting with a person. He stepped forward decisively, wondering what kind of meeting awaited him. He was immediately met by a stern-looking guard with a spear. She, stammering nervously, whispered, "Is this really from El Village?" The guard confirmed this, looking at him with deep and obvious suspicion. He gruffly croaked to find out what business she had in such a rural place. Shu cleared his throat, composed himself, and introduced himself friendly. He introduced himself as Saishu Shu, a traveler who collected materials and sought lodging. The guard's face instantly softened. He sighed with relief upon seeing a specialized adventurer. He laughed and explained that the forest teems with monsters. That's why he is so cautious. The friendly guard introduced himself. Laurent from the village self-defense. He apologized for his hostility and explained that guests are extremely rare in their village. Relief blossomed on her face when Lauren extended a friendly handshake to him. He gratefully shook the guard's hand and thanked him for his kindness. While they walked, Lauren couldn't help but think, what a strange and unusual name she has. Lauren looks at Shu with curiosity and asks about his surname. Shu panics inwardly when he realizes that in this world only nobles have surnames. Lauren raised an eyebrow and directly asked Shu if he is a nobleman. Shalaf nervously whispered that his name simply means gathering, and Lauren couldn't hold back a smile. Lauren waved her hand, saying that Shu was probably tired after the journey. He points down the village street, directing Shu to the large tavern. With a smile reaching her ears, Lauren solemnly welcomes him to the village of Firmale. Shu's face lit up with sincere gratitude as he thanked the friendly guard. He happily walks through the village, admiring the charming scenery. He passes several charming cottages with open wooden beams where children are playing. A small group of children suddenly stops playing and freezes, staring at the newcomer. Shu walks by and waves to them lightly and friendly. The children shyly wave back from afar. In a close-up, the children wave, their faces shining with joy. Shu smiles to himself, feeling calm and relieved. He thinks that Fermale seems like a very cute village. Soon he reaches the end and raises his eyes to its simple sign. He recognizes it as his destination and is excitedly amazed that he can read this font. His soul is filled with peace and a sense of security. He is grateful to God for heavenly support. Entering, he politely said aloud, "Good day," into the empty room. He asks himself if there is someone nearby, and just then a barely audible voice whispered. She shuddered and instantly turned toward the unexpected sound behind him. A young girl with freckles and braids asks if he is a client. Her eyes widen with excitement. She understands that they have a guest. She turns and loudly calls her mother, exclaiming that a buyer has come. A female voice sounded from above. She replied that she is already coming down. A woman with a kind face and freckles appears. Her expression is warm and friendly. She notices his unfamiliar face and immediately guesses he is a traveler. Shu firmly says that he has just arrived in the village. He smiles broadly and says that his name is Shu. The woman smiled and introduced herself. "I am Anna, the innkeeper, and this is my daughter Nico." Shu gently calls Nico by name, and she shyly responds with her name. Standing by the registration desk, Shu asks if there is a free room. Anna assures him that there are, explaining that guests are very rare here. She smiles and says that a night here costs 4 copper coins. Shu anxiously worries whether he has enough cash to rent a room. He repeats the price, and his face reveals genuine uncertainty about the money. A drop of sweat appears on his forehead. He is worried about the lack of money. He nervously catches Anna's attention to explain his predicament. He sincerely admits, "I am from far away and do not understand the local currency at all." Anna gently explains the value of coins, from copper to platinum. With relief, Cho happily books a room with meals for the next 10 days. Anna asked Nico to escort their new guest to his room. Climbing the stairs, Nico proudly shows off the spacious room waiting for them at the end. Chu is wildly happy to learn that Irja has a normal bath again. Anna adds that he can use it for just 1 copper coin. Nico proudly stands at the threshold and announces that this is his room. Sho is delighted with the clean, spacious, and well-furnished room. He exclaims that this beautiful room is almost too much for one person. Nico puffs out his chest with pride and asks if he needs anything else. She mentions his hall and asks where he could sell materials. Nico thoughtfully suggests a place owned by a man named Boten. Shu eagerly asked if she could take him there, and she gladly agreed. She asks him to call as soon as he rests. "A word of thanks, sir?" When she closes the door, Nico freezes for a moment. She has one last important request. She sincerely insists that he must promise to call her. Shu warmly laughed and promised that he would definitely ask Nico for help. He lies down on the bed and feels the tension ease after a long day on the road. He smiles with happiness. The first people he met were so kind. The camera smoothly glides over the peaceful roofs of the village Fermal. After resting, she sits on his bed and sorts through the herbs he collected. He decides to first sell the materials from which the equipment is made. His eyes fixated on that beautiful scale of the sparkling dragon that he found. He pressed it tightly to himself, deciding to keep this precious treasure only for himself. The scene changes smoothly. Gentle dots scatter in the background. Shu finds Nico in the corridor. He is diligently mopping the wooden floor. He approaches her and asks, "Are you not busy? Are you ready to show me around?" Frightened, Nico drops the mop and insists that she is not busy at all. Anna overheard and gently reminded her daughter, "Do not break the promise given to the guest." With a smile, it tells Nico that she may go. Anna muses a story about whether Nico is simply running away from household chores. Then she decides that helping the guest is also a great way to help. Chu quietly smiled, touched by the warm family atmosphere. Anna adds she is also curious about what Shu found. She says hopefully that maybe he has something interesting for her husband. She comforts him. Don't worry, even if her husband is indifferent. The scene changes. We see a cozy rural shop from the outside. Nico proudly points to Button's general store, the place where everyone goes for tools. Shu enters and announces his arrival with the word hello. His eyes opened wide and sparkled with admiration at what appeared before him. The store, packed up to the floor to ceiling, is bursting with all kinds of goods. The amazing Shu Breeze was completely enchanted by this collection. He recognizes familiar items, bowls and other kitchenware. He also notices strange glowing crystals. Their purpose remains a mystery. The entire store, for a collector like him, is a cluttered treasure trove. He remembers, in his starter kit from God there was no kitchenware at all. His gaze catches on a metal device resembling a portable stove. Instinctively, he activates his powerful ability to appraise to learn more about it. He shone with joy when he found an inexpensive cassette plate. His stomach growls at the thought of grilled mushrooms, but the price is simply staggering. He realizes that the price tag of 1 platinum coin turns this into a true luxury item. And just then the shop door creaked, and a sharp, frightening sound broke the silence. A stout man in spectacles appeared, sincerely apologizing for his absence. Nico calls him Bao Ton, and he asks if she is carrying out an assignment. She says she is leading a guest who wants to sell materials. But Tan recognizes Shu, the very new traveler he had heard about. He smiles kindly and introduces himself. Bo Tan, owner of the local shop. Shu introduces himself and asks Batten to review his materials. Batten gladly agrees, happy to receive goods from a stranger. Shu places the bag on the counter, ready to start the deal. But Tan, the shopkeeper, adjusts his glasses, peering intently into the bag of shoes and murmurs thoughtfully. His eyes suddenly widen in shock. He recognizes this item as a magical bag. The puzzled Shu asked how he could possibly understand what it was just by looking. Batten confirms and explains that he had seen such a thing only once, during a trip to a big city. He describes the bag as a legendary artifact, a true treasure of illusions, created by ancient masters. Everyone froze in surprise, and Bhutan asks Shu where he managed to get such a precious item. The footwear inside panics. He knows he cannot explain that it was a gift from God. He clutches his chest, pretending as if he suddenly felt sorrow when Batten asks what is wrong. Shu, with a sad face, says that this bag is a gift from a person who is no longer in this world. Batten fully believed the tragic story. His face became serious and full of sympathy. He says that for such a young person as Shu, incredible determination is needed to bear such a burden. Patan, apologizing for his tactless question, finally suggests starting the evaluation of the materials. He examines ordinary herbs and mushrooms and says that all of them are quite useful. He offers 7 bronze and 1 silver for the herbs, and for Wagner's fangs, 3 silver coins. Suddenly she realizes that by the color of the light from his inspection skill, one can determine the value of an item. Then he pulls out the next treasure. A perfectly preserved snake skin, coiled in a spiral in a box. Bhutan's eyes flashed with a masterful gleam. He enthusiastically declared the white snake skin wonderful. She recalls that unique orange reflection of the skin and hopes to get about 8 silver coins. Standing next to Nico, Batten prepares to make an offer that will stun them both. In the quiet shop, Baton calmly offers 4 gold coins for the skin. The eyes of Shu and Nico simultaneously popped out of their heads in an instant. Pure cartoon shock. Shouts in disbelief over such a high price. And Batten mistakenly interprets his reaction as disappointment. Batten explains that white snake skins in their lands are incredibly rare and extremely valuable. Thinking his offer is too low, he panics and raises it to 5, then to 6 gold coins. "I have found snake skins before," exclaims Nico, "but they have never cost this much." Bhutan cleared his throat, preparing to lecture them about the true value of this material. He explains that perfectly clean, snow-white leather is insanely popular among the nobility. Having a bag made from that leather, he emphasizes, is a true status symbol. He adds that in the capital, it would sell for even more. Smiling, she insists that the initial offer was more than enough, and gladly agrees. With relief, Batten clasped his palms and thanked Shu gratefully for the deal. Then he looked closely at the precious moonflower and offered a decent 3 silver coins for it. Bhutan explains that the flower absorbs moonlight, which is why it becomes a key ingredient in restorative potions. He enthusiastically praises Shu, calling him a true master appraiser for finding such quality items. She thinks he was just bluffing, but finally begins to feel what the prices are here. Bhutan remarked again, in the capital they would pay even more for such things. Confidently smiling, Shu decides that he can trust Bhutan as an honest trader. Bhutan places a small, heavy pouch of coins on the tray, thereby putting a full stop to their business. Shu gladly takes the payment, counting that he now has 10 gold and 2 silver coins. He looks excitedly at the incredible profitability of this new world and feels as if he has won the jackpot. Nico looks up at Shu, surprised that just gathering materials can earn so much money. Batten corrects her, explaining that it is not always so profitable. Shu's skill is exceptional. Shalaf modestly thought to himself that his unique, God-given skills are the real secret. He squeezes the pouch of coins and realizes, if he masters his skills, he will be able to earn even more. As soon as Shu and Nico returned to leave the shop, Bhutan suddenly called them. Sitting at the table, Patan explains that she wants to ask for a favor, one that requires shoe working skills. She turned around, surprised by this request, and asked what the shopkeeper needed. Leaning forward with a sincere expression, Bhutan asks Shu to find a full moon flower for him. Shu and Nico looked up, their faces mixed with confusion and burning curiosity from the name of the rare item. Shu froze for a moment, pondering the unexpected request. A drop of sweat appeared on his forehead. He bought it and repeated the name Full Moon Flower, officially starting the footwear of the next complex quest. Nico instantly understood everything and excitedly asked if it was a gift for her mother. The blushing Baton scratched his head and admitted that his wife's birthday was coming very soon. Filled with joy from the romantic gesture, Nico cheerfully jumped out of the room. She imagines that beautiful legendary flower, which, they say, brings happiness to whoever receives it. She, with a trembling voice, tells Shu that this flower is extremely rare and very hard to find. Shu hesitated. His desire to help conflicted with the feeling that this task was simply impossible. A sudden voice of Button pulled him out of his thoughts and back to the present. Button smiles friendly and reminds Shu about that magical heat conduction plate he had previously admired so much. Holding a strange mechanical device above his head, he offers Shu to try it. During the botany demonstration, I was enthusiastically explained, "Just place the magic stones in the glass chamber near the base." Shu holds one of the nice pebbles, resembling a pebble, and curiously wonders if his appraisal skill will work on it. The skill worked, and the stones in the box lit up with a magical glow. The information panel explains that magic stones are crystallized mana found inside monsters. Shu had an epiphany. He can direct his scouting skill at these stones and immediately detect all monsters nearby. Button snapped him out of his thoughts and apologized for the distraction. He continues the demonstration, explaining that you just need to close the lid and turn the handle. With a light click, a clean and steady flame instantly ignites from the stove burner. Shu and Nico stood with their mouths agape in awe, marveling at how easily the magical flame appeared. Nico sighs. How much easier cooking would be if such a convenient device stood at home. Botan leans forward, his glass sparkling. He is preparing for his final irresistible offer. He paints a vivid picture. Shu cooking fresh mushrooms and fish on a portable stove in the middle of the wild nature. He offers an incredible deal. Find the flower, and he will sell the stove at a crazy discount. Shu's eyes shine with determination. He accepts the task and vows to make their marriage happy. Baton explains that his wife's birthday is in just 4 days and apologizes for such a short notice. Shu bowed his head. Suddenly, a huge weight of the tight deadline overwhelmed him. Nico utters an encouraging word, confident that his skills will lead him to the flower. Shu sighs, admitting that with such a meager amount of clues it will be incredibly difficult to find it. Perhaps Nico's successor's father saw it. After all, he ran and played in that forest as a child. Instantly feeling a surge of strength, Shu asked her to immediately introduce him to her father. Finally returning, Nico joyfully announces that she is home. A handsome man with reddish blonde hair turns and meets his daughter with a warm smile. She instantly recognizes the man, his jaw drops, and he exclaims, "Lauren!" Lauren warmly greets Shu. He asks if he is also staying at the inn, and the guard just laughed. She begins to assemble the puzzle in her head, and a look of understanding slowly appears on his face. The connection becomes clear when Nico joyfully jumps into Lawrence's arms and calls him Dad. She couldn't believe that Loren was really Nico's father, and Loren himself confirmed it. Lauren, smiling, throws her arm over Shu's shoulder and teasingly mocks him for getting so close to the daughter so quickly. Anna's voice off-screen shouts at the man to stop his nonsense. She appears and asks Loren to come and help prepare dinner. As he leaves, Loren gives Shu a thumbs up and assures him that Anna's food is the best. Shu smiles, realizing he doesn't need any formal introduction. He will just ask Lauren later. Night falls and stars light up one by one over the quiet village. Completely exhausted after a busy day, Shu flopped face down on the bed with a soft thud. He lies sprawled out and thinks that somehow he survived his first day in the new world. Lying in the dark, he realizes the body is tired, but strangely he doesn't want to sleep at all. He stood up, remembered the book God gave him, and decided, now is the perfect time to read. He pulls out the book on magic for beginners, thinking that learning magic will be useful in his work. Here is the decorative page of the book. It whispers its main principle. Magic is the thought and desire of every person. Shu carefully studies the diagram of the 6 magical elements and decides that it is time to try to cast his first spell. In his room, Shu decides that fire magic is too risky to practice indoors. He quickly flips through his grimoire and finds a drawing of the light orb spell. A slight smile appears on his face. He thinks this is the perfect spell for reading. He closes his eyes, focuses all his will, and prepares to release the spell. He shouts the spell Light Orb, and Nico, who is tending flowers below, jumps in surprise. From the window on the 2nd floor of the end wall, a dazzling glow bursts forth. Sparks from a lighter. Shu's eyes are wide open, reflecting a blinding, incredibly bright magical light. Outside, Lauren and Anna shield their faces from the sudden, powerful flash. A beam of pure light swiftly shoots into the night sky and illuminates the entire village. He screams in pain, clutching his face with his hands and shouting that his eyes are burning. The family bursts in, and someone with a worried expression on their face calls him by name. Stunned on the floor, he stubbornly says every week that he is fine amid this chaos. He stares at his hand and does not understand why something is wrong with his magic. His consciousness begins to fade and sink into a familiar dark void. He opens his eyes in the ethereal space and sees a calm figure before him. He suddenly sat up, recognizing the god who greets him after the first day. Panic grips him. He realizes that the appearance of God inevitably means something terrible. He shouted dramatically. Did he somehow already die on his first day? God smiled gently and reassured him. They just came in to check if he was okay. The deity asks, "How do you like this new world now that you have settled in?" Shu's fear disappears. A bright, delighted smile blooms on his face. He enthusiastically talks about countless materials, shining with the joy of his new life. God listens with a gentle expression on his face. Indeed, he so enjoys the world. He sits cross-legged in the void and feels that he is already getting used to these meetings. God asks if he has encountered any problems, and she recalls that magical mishap. He explains that he tried a simple spell, but it turned out to be astonishingly powerful. He asked if God had accidentally given him some cheat guide on strategy. God simply said the power of spells is directly proportional to the mana reserves of the caster. The tiny chibi god, as if he himself would prefer to have less power. God laughed. He found it funny that only now he begins to doubt his immense power. Shulyux was confused, recalling how God promised him a quiet life as a gatherer. God admits, they thought he would be greedy, and his modesty reassures them. He says simply, slow life is just gathering herbs and stones. God recalls with surprise how they fought with mighty dragons using boots for materials in games. The deity explains that as a medium he was always meant to possess great power. The tiny chibi god grumbles angrily that Shu didn't even complain that he was too strong. God gently encourages him. With practice he will learn to control his magic. Shu clenches his fist, filled with new determination to master his abilities. God quietly noticed that their time was up and wished him a happy journey. His eyes shine with gratitude. Shu thanks the deity for their help. He sharply returned to reality and flopped onto the bed in that room. In the quiet village of Fairmill, a new day awakens. Shu goes down the stairs and cheerfully greets Anna in the morning. Last night, Anna asked if he was okay and said she was worried. He sincerely apologizes, saying he was so exhausted that he immediately fell asleep. She asks about the flash and he fibs, as if he found a strange glowing substance. His stomach rumbled loudly and just at the right moment interrupted the awkward conversation. Anna laughed warmly and said that he was probably hungry, inviting him to eat. Shu's eyes sparkled with joy at the thought of a warm breakfast. He looks at the feast with amazement and asks if it is really possible to have so much. He thought with a barely noticeable nostalgia that years had passed since he last ate a real hot breakfast. He sincerely clasped his hands in gratitude and impatiently prepared to start eating. He greedily bites into a large piece of dense, juicy meat. Deliciousness spreads through him as he eats with enthusiasm. He praises the soup, admiring its bright colors and lively spices. He asks Anna about the ingredients, and she casually thinks, is something not to his taste? A spark glistens in his eyes when he eagerly asks if he can have a second helping. Anna laughed loudly and agreed to give him more as a special favor. He strokes his full belly, sighs with pure bliss, and sincerely thanks her for the food. Lauren returned from patrol and loudly announced that he was home, and Anna greeted him with a warm smile. Shulgritz Lauren was stunned with surprise upon seeing him on his feet. Lauren grabbed him and asked in panic if he was okay after the flash of light in the room. She recalls his plan and says he needs to ask Lauren something. They sat at the table while Shu explained Botan's request about the full moonflower. Lauren instantly grasps it, and a slightly mischievous, as if innocent smile plays on his face. He admits that he once saw something similar but doesn't remember where. She watches intently, thinking he might bring her a flower if he finds a patch of flowers. Lauren says the only thing he remembers is a strange glow in the forest. Shu's if he means the place that sparkled in the sun. He is looking for an explanation, and the sun rays penetrate deep into the forest. Lauren vividly describes the clearing where, in the middle of the sunny day, one flower shines brightly. Shu gathers the clues together and suddenly realizes that the flower must grow in a sunny spot. Suddenly he remembers how Nico talked about the flower stand in the moonlight, and this confirms his theory. He sincerely thanks Lauren, and Lauren only blinks in surprise. He did not expect him to understand everything so quickly. Shubao admits he still has no evidence for his theory. Smiling broadly, he declares that he will immediately go look for it. Lauren cheers him on, sincerely wishing him the best of luck in his important mission. Shu sets off, confident that he can find the forest that Lauren described. He knows well that this information is vague, but it is his only thread. He freezes for a moment and contemplates the world around. The wind blows his hair and carries the scent of fresh grass. He closes his eyes and savors the peace of the new world. He suddenly snaps out of it. No, there is no place for sentimentality before entering the forest. He pulls out his grimoire, deciding that he must be ready for anything. He realizes that even the coolest VR game can never convey this feeling of full immersion. He flips through the book and decides to study fire magic to light campfires on his journeys. He finds the right page. It has a small flame drawn on it. He reminds himself, relax and don't press so hard this time. He shouted, "Fire!" and a powerful explosive pillar of flame wildly threw him backward. He panics, shouting that it's so hot here that a dangerous forest fire could start. In panic, he fumbles for a counterspell and quickly finds one that works against water. Shouting, "Water!" a powerful, uncontrolled stream burst from his hands. A colossal force of the spell threw him back in the air. He falls heavily to the ground, soaking wet and croaking hoarsely. He understands. Only persistent training will help him tame his enormous power. His wet cloak hangs on a branch, dripping drops, and he thoughtfully thinks that liquid magic is hard to tame. He looks for a simpler spell that can be applied at close range. He comes across the spell Freeze and feels that it might be exactly what he needs. Suddenly he realizes. This allows him to tame monsters he meets without killing them. With new determination, he prepares to try again, this time with greater control. With a determined cry, Shu releases the power of his ice spell. Ice flashes burst from his hands, turning the meadow into solid ice. Cold sweat runs down his forehead as he realizes. The effect is much stronger than he imagined. Yet he is confident. This is exactly the spell that will help him hone control over magic. He decides to practice while searching for the full moon flower. Following Lauren's advice, he finally stands at the entrance to the southern forest. He peers into the forest thicket and notices that it is dark here even during the day. The path ahead is shrouded in a frightening eternal twilight. He freezes. Suddenly a brilliant idea strikes him. Holding the magic stone in his hands, he involuntarily thinks, will his survey skill work on it? He closes his eyes, concentrates to gather strength within himself, and silently utters a prayer for success in his heart. He commands survey, and his unique skill unleashes all its power. His face lights up with pure joy, and he clearly senses where each monster is hiding. He thanks God for creating such an incredibly convenient skill. With new confidence, he feels that he can safely enter the forest. He solemnly announces that his hunt for the full moon flower has officially begun. He immediately stops resisting the temptation of other materials, but he simply falls at their feet. The temptations turn out to be too strong. He knows. It is impossible to just walk past all these valuable things around. He notices red and purple caps, mushrooms he has never seen before. He finds a strange twisted plant and immediately calls it mommy grass. He is delighted by this pleasant crackling sound heard when it is gathered. He is thrilled by the real sensation under his fingers when collecting something with his own hands. Fatigue and hunger are real sensations, not just numbers on a screen. His thoughts are suddenly interrupted by a loud rumbling in his stomach. Looking up, he sees the sun high in the sky. So it is noon. Panic overwhelms him as he realizes he has lost his way and achieved nothing in his mission. He sighs deeply and decides that it is time to take a break and eat. On the third morning, the guard at the village gate was awakened by a knock. The watchman rubbed his eyes and thought in surprise, who could be calling at such an hour? Shu greets him with a bright smile and cheerfully says, "Good morning." The guard, with a note of surprise, asks if he is returning to the southern forest again. Exu confirms, explaining that today is the deadline. He must find him. Another guard says that he is dedicated, and she agrees. They both work hard. The first guard hands him a coffee pot, a gift from Anna. Waving his hand, he shouted that he was leaving, and headed into the forest. The watchman watches him go and says with a smile, how diligent he is. His companion swallowed the coffee and agreed. They froze, seeing Boughton standing below. He had overheard them. Boughton looks toward the forest and quietly whispers the name of the full moon flower. He recalls his failed attempts, frightened by those monsters inside. He feels a quiet confidence that this Shu is the one that will win. When night falls, shurikles on the full moon flower glow in the darkness. He thinks that now it will be much easier to notice it. He knows that monsters are most active at night, but feels that there is no other choice. The birthday is already at the doorstep, and he carefully looks around, determined to find the flower. His face is tense from concentration. The deadline presses relentlessly. He sighed with relief, seeing that his skill really notices the monster glows in the dark. He decides to go carefully, repeatedly using his observation skill. He spends hours gathering various materials, carefully waiting for his target. He raised his eyes to the sky and suddenly realized how much time had passed. He barely dodged the night predator that suddenly lunged from the darkness. The dark, endless forest seems to stretch into eternity. He is gasping from exhaustion, in despair because he still hasn't found the flower. Looking at the setting moon, he fears that dawn will come too soon. Suddenly his eyes widen in shock as he notices something. He rushed to run, noticing a beam of moonlight nearby. He burst into a clearing and froze. Before him stood a huge, shadowy bear. His heart pounds in his chest with a jolt of pure terror. The bear lets out a low guttural roar and its eyes glow ominously. His hand instinctively reaches for the sword hilt at his belt. He stumbled and jumped back. A scream exploded in his head. He is doomed. His first instinct is to turn and flee from the terrible creature. But he restrains himself, realizing that would be a fatal mistake. The bear looks at him as if waiting for his next move. He forces himself to calm down and activates the evaluation skill. The skill immediately determines. This is a blue grizzly. Danger rank B. He is terrified. He realizes that fleeing would awaken the creature's attack instinct. He panics because of the B-rank threat, but the collector in him instantly notices its value. The bear growls. Its patience is at the limit. With a deafening roar, the huge beast lunges forward, launching an attack. Shu raises his hands and releases a desperate ice spell at full power. The bear that charged instantly finds itself entombed in a coffin of sharp, shining ice. He gasps, looking at the frozen result of his stunning magic. He gently descends, and dust slowly settles around the huge ice statue. He looks at the snarling face of the bear, frozen forever in a moment of rage. He landed with a victorious smile, filled with joy. His magic practice had finally borne fruit. He carefully tapped on the thick ice, not believing that he had instantly frozen such a huge creature. Looking up at the frozen beast, it seems to him that the beast is even more terrifying up close. Suddenly a thought pierces him, and he remembers his true purpose. There, in the single beam of moonlight, the beautiful full moon flower shines. He stands before it, enchanted by its otherworldly beauty. He extends a trembling hand and whispers, "This must be it." His assessment confirms this is it, and the root preserves its light. Holding the flower, he shines with joy and exclaims, "I finally found it!" He carefully places the glowing flower into a tall glass jar. He admires his prize, happy that he has finally completed his mission. He seals the jar to preserve its beautiful light in his magical pouch. He looks over his shoulder, not knowing what to do next. His gaze fell on the huge frozen body of a blue grizzly. He contemplates the problem and honestly admits that he has no idea how to process the bear. A crazy idea flashes in his mind. Will all of this fit into his bag? He pushes the huge, ice-covered bear toward the opening of the bag. He is shocked. Everything instantly sucked inside with a quiet, soft pop. He sits on the ground, stunned, and exclaims, "It really went in!" He reasons that the bag rule, which forbids bringing in living creatures, does not apply if the creature is dead. Smiling contentedly, he decided that he must hurry back to the village. At dawn, he bursts into the tavern, shouting a joyful greeting. Suddenly, an elegant woman appears before him, a stranger with a feather duster in her hands. The woman smiled warmly at him, and he was completely bewildered. An elegant woman with a warm, knowing smile asked if he was Shu's. Shu was caught off guard. His stammering confused him. A trembling yes in confirmation. Just then, Bolton burst into the room and excitedly shouted the name Shu's. He impatiently grabs Shu's hand and thanks him for waking up so early. With a cheerful smile, Boughton suddenly realizes he completely forgot about manners. He proudly introduces this woman as his wife, Sonaria. Shu froze at her beauty and, stammering, whispered that the pleasure was only his. Boughton is on cloud 9, confident that this will make his wife's birthday perfect. With eyes sparkling with hope, he asks you about his business. In Shu's mind, a thought about the request flashed instantly, and he remembered the magical conduction stove. He asked if there was anything else that prompted Boughton to invite him upstairs. The scenario stands and watches them leave. One question mark hangs in the air. Later, the scenes move to the corridor in front of Shu's room. Boughton anxiously knocks, asking if he managed to find the full moon flower. She opens the door with a calm smile and says to him, "Don't worry." He proudly shows the glowing flower in the jar and says he found it. Boughton's face shines with sincere, unspoiled joy as he gasps. Both signal for silence to keep the surprise a secret. He holds the jar boat in his hands and marvels that it is really the full moon flower. He whispers what a beauty it is, and Shu looks on, proud of his work. His eyes shine with emotion, and he sincerely thanks you for everything. He does not doubt for a moment. Sonaria will be delighted with the gift. The Shu lit up with a wide, sincere smile and said he was glad to help. The shot gently glides to the bright, cloud-covered sky. Thus begins a new day. Shu bitterly reflects that his gathering of materials has never before been useful to anyone. He decides to hurry back to the end and share the joyful news. He feels that his family is surely already worried about his absence. With a cheerful smile, he returns at the end. Immediately, he is met by Nico, arms crossed, face in a fiercely pouted grimace. She quickly apologizes, realizing that she was probably worried. He explains he brought a gift because a birthday was approaching, and gently scolds his daughter for bothering their guests. Nico raised her eyes, still upset after having worried so much about him. Shu suggests that they all share this happiness and kill two birds with one stone. Anna, with a radiant smile, announced, "In honor of the celebration, she will prepare everything he desires." Shu asked if the skilled cook would agree to prepare the ingredient he brought. A wave of horror covered Anna and Nico. They froze in place. Shu proudly serves a huge blue grizzly for dinner, frozen in an ice shell. Hearing the noise, Loren burst and demanded to know if Anna was safe. The cry of the blue grizzly echoes through the village streets. A woman leaned out of the window, shocked by the news about the monster. A couple on the street instantly panicked, not understanding why the grizzly was here. The man urgently tells his companion, "Go inside to the guards." Amid the chaos, you can only offer a shy mile of apologies. He sighs and realizes he has made such a mess again that he will have to explain. The montage shows the next half-month during which Shu happily gathers materials. But at strange inspects, he was brought a vegetable boot resembling a stocking. Shu explains with a smile. It is a type of vegetable called gogogi. He also says that it is incredibly nutritious, and tea can be brewed from it. Batten looks into the book and is convinced. Shu is right about that rare plant. He notices the Shu is not local, so it must have come from afar. He thinks about Shu and says that even the leaves will become a valuable ingredient. Baton begins to explain that, although he likes clearly defined things, this became an incredible support for his business. He gently asks if Shu is starting to feel dissatisfied in their small village. Shu lowered his gaze to his cup and admitted that he thought the same. He loudly announces that it is time to set off to a new land. Botan listens quietly. A sad understanding is read on his face. He admits that the small village will not be able to hold someone who has a talent for shoes. He gently smiles and says that he looks forward to seeing Shu's future. He promised, on his last day the whole village will come to see him off. Shu sincerely thanks Botan for his kindness and support. Nico, hearing this news, asks in shock, "Is Shu already leaving Thermal?" Shu confirmed, explaining that thanks to Bonza's help he has raised enough money. Nico collapses on this table and sobs that it will be boring here without him. Anna jokingly teases her daughter, smiling. "Apparently you clearly loved that Shu." Then she angrily reproaches Nico for not being honest about her feelings. That evening, Lauren asks Shu where he plans to go next. She, as if revealing a secret, says that his path lies to the largest city in the region. The panoramic view opens before the eyes, a huge fortified city grand town. Lauren dreamily thought that this grand town really looks like the perfect city for Shu. He enthusiastically explains that there is an adventurers guild here and mountains rich in ore. Shu's eyes lit up at the thought of all the new materials he still needed to find. He admits, though his heart rejoices, leaving Nico will be painful. He looks at Lauren, his heart filled with gratitude for the kindness of that man. At the farewell dinner, Shu, full of gratitude, sincerely thanks the family for their incredible hospitality. On the day of his departure, the village gates buzzed with a crowd. Shu bows deeply, sincerely thanking everyone for their kindness during his short stay. Anna insists that they are the ones who should thank him for breathing life into the village. Little boy shyly hopes brother Bear Killer has a safe journey. Drops of sweat on the shoes understand. The nickname Bear Killer has now firmly taken hold. He feels a small, persistent tug on his cloak. Turning back, he notices that Nico is hiding shyly behind his leg. With tears in her eyes, she begs him, "Promise that you will return." She looks down at the little girl with a gentle and soothing smile. He swears that he will stay by her side again, and she insists that he swear. Suddenly Lauren appears and defensively says that she can take his daughter. Shu was confused by the sudden and funny display of paternal care. Anna teased her husband, laughing that his skill with shoes makes him a real catch. Shu laughs along with the crowd, thinking that it is too early to talk about that. He bitterly thinks about how sad it is to part with this wonderful, hospitable village. Suddenly he realizes Botana is not among the crowd in Scenaria. The horse's hoof steps into the frame, and suddenly a familiar voice sounds. A horse-drawn carriage approaches, and Botanan Sonari firmly holds the reins. They kindly offered to give him a ride part of the way to the city. Bowen quickly and insistently insists that it is not a bother for them at all. He explains that they were already heading there anyway. They were supposed to meet a merchant. Shu, stunned by their generosity, gratefully accepts their offer. As the carriage was leaving, Anna shouted one last time, "Be healthy!" Waving goodbye, Cherovik sincerely wished everyone in the village of Firmu well and set off on the road. Leaving the comfort of 4 Mill, the squad sets out for new materials and comrades. A cheerful cat girl with a basket of fresh bread joyfully announces their arrival. She energetically points to a large tavern and proudly calls it the Pavilion of the Cat's Tail. With a friendly smile, she holds the door open for Shu to enter. Incentrion is decorated with a fine or interwoven iron pattern, as if hinting at its quality. The door clicked and opened, and she softly offered to lead him inside. Shu looked out the door, and the first surprise froze on his face. His surprise quickly melted away, giving way to a soft, happy look of gratitude. The tavern buzzes with life. It is filled with a lively and diverse crowd of visitors. The first floor serves as both the reception and the main dining hall. Mina, a cat girl, smilingly explains that at night this space transforms into a pub. Shu thought to himself that the inn was incredibly bright and welcoming. He notices numerous diligent cat people bustling around the room. He is delighted to realize that this is like a cat, a truly pleasant discovery. Mina asks if he likes the inn, although it can be a bit noisy here sometimes. The senior staff member shouted, "Mina, you are late and need to help." Without wasting time, Mina quickly says she is with a client and asks her colleague to wait. She notes that, strangely, not all cat people appear in their sentences with Nia. Mina shows her room, simple but neat and cozy, his own little corner. As Mina finishes the brief tour, he feels that the room is so cozy and comfortable. Mina's face becomes serious as she explains the last iron rule of the end. She froze in shock, wondering what this unbreakable rule could be. She strictly forbids him from touching the ears or tails of the workers. She explains that people are usually curious, but touching them is frightening and considered impolite. Sweating nervously, Shu hurriedly says that he understood this important rule. He cannot deny that they look fluffy, but he knows touching a stranger is definitely wrong. He bows low, apologizing for imagining it as a cat cafe. Just as Mina was about to leave, Shu urgently called her by name. He begs her to tell him one more, but extremely important detail. Mina turned to him with a curious, slightly embarrassed expression on her face. The answer to his desperate question awaits inside this magnificent bathhouse. The footwear soaks in a large steaming bath and feels completely rejuvenated. He feels that nothing compares to the sincere pleasure of a real hot bath. He gazes at the magnificent architecture and suddenly realizes, this is not a natural hot spring. A small dragon-like creature serves as a magical heater, and he finds it very convenient. For a moment he is gripped by panic, imagining the disaster his own powerful magic could cause. Relaxing, he senses a pleasant herbal aroma filling the air. A man with long silver hair carefully adds herbs to the water. Shoot with a smile, paddle closer, and ask the man what he is doing. The man says the innkeeper asked him to prepare a special healing bath. It is a special mixture that relieves fatigue and heals wounds after adventures. He adds that from time to time he adjusts the mixture. It is part of his own research. Xu, full of admiration, happily introduces himself as a new adventurer and heads to the guild. He shyly admits that he is still a complete novice, however. The man smiled quietly and peacefully. He was glad that Xu was enjoying the bath so much. When the apothecary leaves, Xu respectfully thanks him for his hard work. Completely relaxed, he decides to rest well and set off for the guild tomorrow. He wonders how far his initial skills and God-given power will take him. The next day, he stands before the massive, formidable building of the Adventurers Guild. He raises his head in absolute delight, completely overwhelmed by its incredible grandeur. Unlike in the game, here travelers have no visible ranks or levels. The veteran traveler notices. Here everyone looks like a true professional. A large wolf-like man roughly tells him to leave the entrance. Shu flinched at the sudden and aggressive reprimand. He gathers his spirit, firmly determined to enter the hall and present himself as completely confident. He goes inside. His jaw drops at the incredible sight that opened before him. Guild Hall, a chaotic hive of activity and trade, full of embezzlement. Peeking from behind the crowd, he was stunned to see how many people were inside. It seems that many people dream of becoming adventurers. It seems the freedom and flexible schedule offered by this job are attractive. He groans in despair upon seeing the incredibly long queue at the reception. Deciding to wait, he first examines the Great Hall. He notices a large crowd tightly gathered around a huge bulletin board on the wall. He squeezes through the crowd, complaining about all the inconveniences of his short stature. Finally, he clearly sees the board, his eyes widening in recognition. This is the task board, covered with dozens of different requests. He is stunned by the incredible number of tasks, a clear sign of the guild's reputation. He thoughtfully scans the board, hesitating over which quest to take first. At first, he notices several tasks for taming monsters of varying difficulty. He thoughtfully looks at the board and thinks, there are a bunch of quests for monsters. He clearly remembers how in previous travels he came across these formidable horned rabbits. But he, as a materials specialist, knows well, combat quests are not his business. His gaze fell on another, much more interesting part of the task board. He finally found it. The section fully dedicated to material gathering requests. His face bursts with pure joy from all these new exotic materials on the list. He thoughtfully considers in his mind the difficulty levels of various gathering quests. He notices that many gathering quests look old and unpopular. He confidently tells himself, I will clear the board. Reaching the table, he immediately asked to take on 2 difficult quests. He greeted the receptionist, a female rabbit named Lapis, with a wide and friendly smile. He, with a sparkle in his eyes, enthusiastically talks about his deep and unquenchable passion for collecting materials. Overflowing with his energy, Lapis feverishly asked him to wait a little. She pauses for a moment to catch her breath after his verbal onslaught. She calmly asks if this is his first registration, and he answers yes. Pulling herself together, she prepares to explain the official guild rules to him. She passionately explains the F2S ranking system used for all adventures. Being a newcomer, she straightforwardly tells him that he will have to start his career from the F rank. She explains that Quessa has set priorities, and he can only take selected ones. Therefore, the C and D rank tasks he so desired are now out of reach for him. She warns him, choose your mission carefully. Failure will result in punishment. Shu shyly apologizes for getting too excited and misunderstanding the rules. Now that he understands everything, Lapis decisively proceeds with the official registration procedure. She reaches out her hand to the drawer in the desk behind the counter and carefully pulls out a special item. She extends the guild plate and asks him to fill it with his magic. Shu takes the plate, his face focused. He is preparing for the task. He asks about the plaque, and she smiles and explains that it is used to track the status of the quest. As soon as the plate recognizes his unique magic, it will begin to monitor every step of his career. Suddenly he realizes, it works almost the same way as fingerprint recognition in his old world. Carefully, he begins to fill the plate with his magical energy. In a moment, a tiny crack appears in the corner of the glass plate. With a sharp crack, the magical guild plaques shattered into pieces. And suddenly a hand appeared. Shu looks in profile. A drop of sweat rolls down his face, and his silence is stunning. Receptionist Lapis is also shocked. Her hands fly to her mouth. She cannot believe it. Shu stammers, asking what happened, and Lapis apologizes profusely for the broken plate. She aloud worries whether he will have to pay for that expensive plate of the magic stone. Shu quickly covers up, saying that the plate is probably just old and worn out. In his soul, he bit himself for the mistake and quietly vowed to better control his magic. Lepus returned with a new plaque and with a pleading voice asked him, "Please try to register again." In his head loudly echoes the advice of God. With practice, he will be able to control his power. Shu's gaze is fixed on the new plate, determined to succeed this time. He imagines his enormous power as a tiny fragile thread penetrating into a glass. From the plate, a soft, even light quietly shone, a sign that it successfully sensed his magic. Lapis shines with joy, claps his hands, and exclaims that everything is fine this time. With relief, Shu learns from Lapis that his registration in the Adventurers Guild is complete. Then Lapis asks whether he has finished for today, or has any other plans. Shu, with eyes shining with excitement, immediately asks if he can take a quest right now. In close-up, his lips are visible, curved in a determined, impatient smile. He enthusiastically asked her to introduce him. His incredible energy impressed the receptionist. Lapis wonders mentally. She has never seen anyone so eager to get to work. She smiles, understanding that this newcomer is truly passionately interested in gathering materials. "Understood," she says professionally, then asks which task he wants to take. Shu cheerfully points to two, Izami Osota and the glowing moss that scared Lapis. She sharply stops him and points out, "The quest with the glowing moss is difficulty E, which is above his F rank." Embarrassed, she was asked to explain. He thought he could raise the rank of Quest 1. Lapis explains that this rule applies only to verified adventures, not to a completely new registrant. Sho turns his thoughts back to the broken plate and decides not to cause her any more trouble. He nods seriously, agreeing that it is better to be cautious and start with an appropriate task. Relieved that he understood, Lapis beamed with a smile and offered to recommend a few ideal quests for beginners. She advises, gather alkinko, crescenza honey, or mint leaves. A wonderful start. Shu thoughtfully ran his hand over his chin and said he understood her advice. Then he smiles so brightly, raises 3 fingers, and says he will do all 3. "All of them!" Lapis exclaimed. Her professional composure was completely shattered by his audacity. While the other adventurers watch silently, she sternly warns about penalties for failure and ruthless deadlines. Shu confidently gives her a thumbs up and insists that everything is fine because he loves gathering so much. Lapis sighs heavily and obediently mutters that it seems before preparing 3 quest forms. With one seal, she officially processes and accepts all 3 requests from Mr. Shu's. She takes the forms, sees that the deadline is 2 days, and assures that he will manage to do everything. He contemplates his goals, starting with alkinko and crescenza. He asks Lapis if there is a place where he could review materials he is not familiar with. Lapis looks, a little stunned by the whirlwind of excitement that just hit her. A tiny cartoon version of her points the way to the guild reference library. Shu steps onto the forest path. His first official adventure finally begins. He steps onto a quiet clearing, immediately notices there are no monsters, and nervously prepares to scout the area. In the memory, Lapis fusses confusedly. Shu instantly asks to see the library reference books. In the library book shines an illustration of crescentra honey, and below it lists its numerous uses. Shumius does not know how to collect honey, but he is sure he will definitely figure it out. A thought flashed in his mind. He had already collected mint once, so at least one task is familiar to him. His face glows with anticipation of new undiscovered materials on Wadum. In the forest, he activates the scouting skill and carefully searches for alkinko mushrooms. "Here they are!" he exclaims. His skill instantly found the target area. He remembers how Lapis told him that in the eastern forest he would definitely find them. Peeking from behind a tree, he prepares to clear his first target. He notices a bunch of mushrooms and mentally tells himself that they are quite ordinary. When he approaches closer, he notices they seem like completely ordinary mushrooms. He extends his finger and catches himself thinking, could this be a different species? Suddenly, the mushroom grew 2 thin legs, and it fearfully let out a few squeaks. He didn't believe it and shouted when the mushroom darted away from him into the forest. Suddenly, he remembers the description from the library. Alkinko run away when they sense danger. Realizing he must chase after it, he stomped his foot, ready to pursue the creature. He started running, but seeing that the mushroom moved incredibly slowly, he immediately stopped. He wonders if it is really normal for it to move so slowly after its legs have grown. To his surprise, other mushrooms also reacted and joined the first one, forming a slow-moving herd. He froze before the bizarre sight, completely captivated by the strange migration of the mushrooms. A warm, charming smile blooms on his face as he watches them. He feels extremely warm at heart. He calmly walks beside the tiny mushroom that is limping. One of the little creatures stumbled over a pebble, and the shoe is just so cute. He considers it charming. He watches as a whole colony marches in a row and happily calls it a mushroom parade. He sharply returned to reality and ordered himself not the time to get lost in a fairy tale. He gently plucks one of the marching mushrooms from the ground and quickly apologizes. Holding the tiny caught alkinko in his palm, he triumphantly celebrates his successful catch. He continues to gather mushrooms one by one, counting them each time. Finally, the quest goal is achieved, 30 mushrooms. He smiles contentedly. Part of his request regarding alkinko is now fulfilled. Now his attention turns to the next goal, the mysterious Christenza honey. He recalls that there was very little information in the library. It only said that it was used as a spice. He smiles with excitement, captivated by the challenge to find out how the flower blooms, and sets off. He activates the observation skill again, this time fully focusing on searching for Crescenza. The scene shifts to the majestic castle-like exterior of the Adventurers Guild. Inside, the elven colleague of Lapis, Shulati, asked her about that interesting newcomer from earlier. Lapis cut in that he was not interesting at all, and it was clear that the meeting had still embarrassed him. She grumbles angrily about his excessive confidence and reproachfully recalls that he even managed to break a guild plate. Shulati became curious and asks Lapis to tell more about that broken plate. Her face became serious. She admits that she had heard about it before. Lapis looks at Shulati, surprised by this revelation. She wondered if that meant someone else had already broken the plate before, and Shulati confirms it. She recalls a story that happened several decades ago, about a powerful mage who served at the royal court. Lepus whispered to ask how many years ago that was, and immediately earned a sharp look from the long-lived elf. Schulte continues enthusiastically explaining that when the powerful mage tried to register their magic, the guild plates instantly shattered into pieces, just like what happened to Shu. The wizard simply laughed. The plate is too weak to hold his incredible power. Lapis wonders aloud. Could Shu have the same power as that legendary mage? Shaliti calmly took a bite of her pie and said she believes it is possible. They both imagine how Shu laughs at this comparison and dismisses it as impossible. Lapis insists, even with great power, completing quests is a completely different matter. She recalls Crescenza honey quests, and finds out they have long been called the grinder for beginners. Her eyes narrowed, and she explained that 80% of beginners fail in this notoriously difficult quest. Shaletti, sipping her drink and smiling, says she can't wait to see what he will bring. Lapis snaps out of her thoughts. From the guild entrance suddenly comes a cheerful, "Hello!" The shining Shu returns and joyfully announces that he has successfully gathered all the necessary materials. Lapis and Shalati stood in complete astonishment, shouted his name, and simultaneously froze in shock. Lopus cannot believe that he finished the quest, except maybe that very morning. She clenches her fists and insists that this is not a problem. It's just incredibly fast. She begins the inspection. The first under the magnifying glass is a flawless vial of collected honey. She reminds him that speed is in everything. Quality must be carefully checked. The nectar of the crescent flower is incredibly delicate. It hides in a fragile pistil. The only correct way is to carefully cut from below and extract it. A 5-star rating flashes on the screen, a sign that this honey has the highest possible quality. Lapis is shocked. The result she sees is perfect. She confirms that alkinko and mint leaves were also collected in perfect condition. The size and relief of the shoe. He was glad that his meticulous work met her high standards. He admits that he was so nervous he almost told her not to shake it. Lapis fell silent for a moment, trying to comprehend these incredible results. She takes off her glasses and a warm smile blooms on her face. She comes to the conclusion his passion for collecting materials is truly sincere. Shu politely said goodbye and left the guild table. He walks through the city streets, the roofs stretching under the cloudy sky. Smiling, he thinks about having received a reward greater than he expected. He finally understands. By collecting materials in better condition, he is paid more. He returns again to the pavilion Cat's Tail, his temporary home. He enters the noisy tavern and loudly announces that he has returned for the evening. The common room buzzes like a beehive, loud and crowded, full of people. She looked around and noticed how the tavern becomes much livelier at night. Adventurers of all kinds have gathered together, sipping drinks and chatting cheerfully in a friendly circle. The noisy, huge crowd slightly overwhelms him. He was about to quietly eat in his room, but suddenly heard someone call his name. He turned sharply, surprised that Mina called him specifically. Mina winked and suggested, "Celebrate your hard work. Treat everyone to drinks." She laughs, understanding her playful suggestion to spend his newly earned money. Feeling great after the day, he agrees that one drink is just what he needs. Mina beams a wide, cheerful smile, happy that he agreed. She called him to follow her, and he only became more puzzled. She looks back at him with an understanding, friendly smile. She tells him there is someone special she wants to introduce him to. She insists again there is someone she wants to present to him. He follows her, trying to understand who she could be talking about. Mina only says he will understand when they get there. He smiled slyly and wondered if his skill at gathering was not a fan. His imagination suddenly crashes against the reality of the situation. Mina cheerfully announced that she had brought their guest. A big shirtless man turns around and warmly welcomes him as a new customer. "Choose my scream and panic, it's a bear!" Mina proudly calls the formidable boss Bondel. Bandel extends a huge hand, greeting friendly. Shu thinks with relief that he still seems to be a good person. He politely responded to the greeting, happy to meet. Suddenly the boss's friendly smile faded, and his face became gloomy and threatening. He leans in and says that Shu has come to his very end. With a mighty shout, he orders Shu to eat the food. An incredible banquet unfolded before him, and he simply froze with admiration. He asked why there was this entire luxurious table full of food. Bandole now makes a funny face and explains that this is his way of greeting him. "This gesture deeply touched you. You think he is an incredible person." While Shu bows with gratitude, Bandel admits that this is only the official reason. The regular customer explains that the chef learns to sense the guests' tastes so that food does not go to waste. Shu is simply stunned by how dedicated he is to his craft. Bando proudly says that although he adjusts the menu to himself, everything is delicious. Chu looks admiringly at the luxurious food, so different from that in his native village. The chef encourages him to try the rare and unusual ingredients of this city. Folding his hands in thanks, Shu impatiently prepares to eat. The first dish served was fish, which looked like a real monster, egorag. The chef says that although the appearance is scary, the taste is exquisite. The chef says again, although the fish looks fierce, it tastes simply incredible. She gazes at that scary dish and hesitates a little, wondering if she will dare to try it. Deciding that it would be rude not to eat, he hesitantly takes a bite. His eyes open wide in surprise, and he exclaims, "What a deliciousness!" He wonders. From the outside, it is not at all visible that it is so fluffy. He enthusiastically praises the perfect seasonings in the dish, to the great joy of the chef. Bandel excitedly presents the very next dish he has to try. A huge, perfectly cooked steak is placed before him. Hugh immediately thought, "This clearly looks tasty." He anxiously asks if it is okay to have such a big steak. Bandel encourages him, "Eat, it's your first time." He rubs his palms again, anticipating how he will enjoy the steak. He bites into a huge, very pleasant piece of meat amid loud applause. He thoughtfully chose, imagining that unique taste of the meat. He catches a wild note of flavor, and it perfectly matches the berry sauce. Then, unable to resist curiosity, he asked the chef what kind of meat it was. Bundle smiles, about to reveal the amazing origin of this encounter. He calmly admits that it is actually orc meat. Shu's face froze in complete shock. He stammers and, barely uttering, asks if he means that orc monster. Bandel confirms. He explains that recently monster cuisine has become a real trend. Bandel explains that if cooked properly, monster meat can be very tasty. She notes, this flavor, which makes you want more, resembles game. He enthusiastically praises the cook's skill for making the dish so delicious. Bando laughed contentedly and said to him, "Eat more." Having eaten and with a happy smile, Shoot thanks him for the incredible dish. He promised to repay the chef for his kindness someday in the future. Bando's face changes for a moment and he says that Shu just said that. He demands the money back right now, not later, and shocks again with a shoe. His behavior changes again. He begs for the shoe from the class pans. He asks hopefully if Shu will sell him some rare materials he finds. Shu froze, confused by the sudden request to bring materials. The chef sighs. He dreams of cooking, but rare ingredients are too expensive. He recalls another adventure, the one that gave him rare herbs they found. The travelers smiled and agreed to show him their finds later. Suddenly she realizes, this is exactly how the chef gets his rare ingredients. Bandel eagerly explains that he is preparing a dish for them from these materials. He looks at Shu and asks, "Doesn't this sound like a bad deal?" Shu enthusiastically accepts the offer and seals the deal with a firm handshake. She clutches the document in her hands and aloud asks who exactly invited him to this job. Lapis explains that for an F-rank adventure, being chosen directly is simply unheard of. She winked and added that this is a huge plus for evaluating his rank. This opportunity seemed to him like a golden ticket to a new level of his career. His eyes lit up when he realized, this is an offer he cannot refuse. Lapis's voice gently urges him to at least go and listen to what the client has to say. He approaches the white picket fence and wonders if this is the real address. He rereads the name on the form, Mr. Klaus. Walking through the forest, he felt a little uneasy from those blurred instructions. Suddenly the path parted, and he looked ahead, surprised. In front of him stood the beautiful, picture-like house, hidden in a lush garden. On a nearby tree hung a charming hand-painted sign. It caught his eye. He was completely captivated. It seemed to him as if this scene had come straight from the pages of a fairy tale. The sign, Medikisi, instantly clarified the situation for him. The client must definitely be a pharmacist. He smelled a wonderful aroma in the corners of the garden where various medicinal herbs grew. A small sign pointed to a patch of chamomile, and his suspicions were confirmed. He clenched his fist, silently bowing, to someday return for chamomile. His attention was drawn to a large greenhouse attached to the main building. Peeking inside, he saw rows upon rows of carefully cultivated medicinal herbs. Filled with excitement, he wished to examine and gather them all. A calm voice asks what he is doing, and this sharply pulls him out of his dreams. The embarrassed Shu quickly apologizes and asks if that man is Mr. Klaus. The man looks at him suspiciously, glances inquisitively at the footwear and says, "Pleased to meet you." He asked if Shu did not remember him and, apologizing, bowed deeply. Shu admits, "This man seems familiar, but he cannot recall his face." The man looks at him with an inscrutable, slightly irritated expression. Sighing, he gently pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose. This gesture revived a memory in him. He exclaimed that it was the apothecary from the bathhouse. The apothecary turned away, muttering about rudeness and about being forgotten because of some footwear. Shu almost melts with admiration, praises the healing bath, and sincerely says that it is a great honor for him to be asked. Kluk could not hold back and whispered a quiet, satisfied smile in response to the sincere compliment. He quickly cleared his throat and composed himself again, regaining his professional calm. He invites Shu to come in to discuss the request, and Shu gladly agrees. As soon as they enter, the Cloud Sworn's workshop is a bit messy. Inside, bundles of herbs hang from the ceiling. Klaus sternly tells him, "Don't touch anything." Shu deeply inhales the complex aroma filling the entire room. This scent strangely calms him and seems incredibly familiar. He suddenly senses a smell as if in his grandmother's house, which greatly puzzles Klaus. Klaus told him to wait in the office for a minute while he prepares himself. Shu finds himself in an elegant room filled with books and display cases with exhibits. He looks around and his eyes sparkle with the admiration of a collector. He sees shelves filled with rare materials he has never seen before and really wants to examine and evaluate each of them. He restrains himself, deciding not to steal the pleasure of finding them himself. Klaus returns and asks if Shu's intense focus means he has become interested in pharmacology. Shu vehemently denies, saying he is simply fascinated when looking at the materials. Hearing rumors about such an adventurer, Klaus remarked how strange he was. He extends a Shu cup of tea to start their conversation. She was delighted by this kind gesture. Klaus explains that this is his signature blend created to chase away fatigue. Shut warmly thanks and takes a big greedy sip. His face instantly twisted, shock from unbearable bitterness. Klaus calmly explains, of course it is bitter, like his medicinal tea. Klaus took a sip himself and could not help but admit, it is quite bitter. Suddenly a brilliant idea flashes in his head. He asked permission to add something to tea and Klaus agrees. She extending a small, elegant bottle of honey golden crusher. Klaus is impressed. He says that this is truly a quality thing worth taking care of. He looks at the honey with the serious, scrutinizing gaze of a true expert. Shu adds only one drop to the cup when they sit opposite each other. Then he cheerfully suggests adding a little to Klaus's cup as well. A barely noticeable blush appears on Klaus's cheeks as he thinks over the suggestion. He agrees to try it, feeling that he is finally beginning to understand that strange young man. They both sip the freshly sweetened tea. Shu shines from the pleasant taste. He says that the bitterness has disappeared, and Klaus agrees. It really is good to drink this way. Shu jokingly says that he supposedly recommended this to his clients. Klaus cleared his throat and felt a little embarrassed by the pleasant conversation. He puts the cup on this table and says that it's time to talk about the main thing. He shows Shu a book. The first item is described as a plant named Yamadoro. She thinks he just needs to dig up the root, and Klaus says that this is exactly the challenge. The diagram shows how the root is delicate and has a complex, easily breakable shape. She understands. This is not a simple matter at all. He cannot just carelessly dig it up. He listens intently while Klaus continues to explain in detail. Cloud insists. Even after digging, the thin root hairs must remain intact. She realizes that precision is needed here, not just the ability to find the item. The thought of the challenge ignites a small flame of excitement in him. The second item turned out to be the cacao flower, a rare three-petaled specimen. Shinjora now burns with passion as Klaus explains that the ordinary version is useless. The last item is the fruit of the quarry root tree, which responds to magic. Klaus insists that it be collected perfectly saturated and with as much magic as possible. But he warns, if you pour too much magical energy, it will burst. Surrounded by the flame of excitement, Shu learns that the balance must be perfect. Klaus knocks on the table, emphasizing what was said, his gaze serious. He firmly states that he will not pay for any materials that do not meet his standards. Then he asks you to decide for him. He gives Shu a chance to refuse if the task seems too difficult. With eyes literally burning, Shu passionately asks to take on the quest. Klaus is completely stunned by Shu's passionate and strong reaction. A barely noticeable smile appears on his face. He calls Shu a weirdo again. The task is set. 3 Yamadoro, 7 Kigyo flowers, and 10 Kururo fruits. As Shu sets off, Klaus calls out, "Don't forget about those harsh conditions!" Shu froze in the doorway and asked if by any chance Klaus has any samples. Klaus was irritated and thought that if he had done it, he wouldn't have asked. Shu joyfully salutes, confirming the 7-day term. Klaus watches him leave and urges, "Hurry up!" He goes back inside and notices that Shu has already disappeared from sight. Suddenly, panic flashed across his face. Suddenly, he realizes that he completely forgot to tell Shu where to find the materials. He sighs. It seems that Shu really only thinks about the materials. Meanwhile, Shu is already walking along the path, happily sketching Yamadoro in his notebook. Shu was filled with excitement before his mission, a warm smile playing on his face. Stars twinkled above the peaceful roofs of the Cat's Tail Pavilion. Dawn broke through, flooding the tavern with the soft, gentle light of the new day. He saw Mina sweeping and smiled, wishing her good morning. Mina turned around. A genuine surprise appeared on her face when she saw him. She looked stunned. He woke up so early and he just smiled widely at her. She waved goodbye to him and warned him friendly. Be careful on the road. He was walking through the hills, deep in thoughts about the important request of Cluses. The map clearly showed that all 3 materials could be found in the eastern forest. He decided to start the search with the most common, the Kikyo flower. He carefully reviewed the notes and decided to start by searching for the variant with 3 petals. The task evoked nostalgia, as if you were looking for a lucky 4-leaf clover. He joyfully hopped along the path, thinking this would be a fun challenge. All right, he thought, gathering himself to start today's hunt. He stood at the edge of the forest but could not use the view. Without a sample, it was impossible. He remembered the words of God, confident that divine knowledge would guide him. With a wave of confidence, he tried to apply a scan on Kikyo. He sighed with disappointment. The first scan did not work. He decided to try a different approach. Instead, to conduct a general survey. His eyes sparkled with pure joy as the entire forest lit up with signals. He looked in delight at materials and forms he had never seen before. He suddenly noticed that even several rare materials were scattered around. He slapped his cheeks, reminding himself that the quest must come first. He decided to start simple, first to find the ordinary 4-petal kekev flower. With relief, he almost immediately came across a large cluster of them. His notes confirmed, the variant with 3 petals is much more valuable. He realized that the rare version is a true trophy, and the hunt became truly exciting. All right, this time for sure, he whispered, refocusing his intent. He again directed his skill of observation at Kiko's flowers. He was completely confused by the number of signals that appeared. Before him stretched a huge field, strewn with countless blooming Kikyo flowers. He sighed, realizing that sorting through them all would be a real hassle. But suddenly, he noticed that some of the shining lights were of a different color, and suddenly he remembered God's advice. The color of the light changes depending on the rarity of the item. He wondered if this was the answer he had been looking for. His face instantly lit up from a sudden, bright insight. He came across the perfect kekeu with 3 petals, and this finally proved that his theory was correct. He sat down and suddenly realized that his skill marks items with colors depending on their rarity. A debate arose in his mind, to use the simple method or to go hunting for real. The devil on his shoulder whispered temptingly, "Finish the quest the easy way." He spent the rest of the day searching the old way. He examined every flower and did not take his eyes off for a moment. The sun began to set, and the tireless search continued in the evening twilight. Just as dusk fell over the forest, his eyes fell on the prey. A cry of pure, genuine joy burst from his lips when he found it. He joyfully announced that he had finally found the 7th flower. He collapsed from exhaustion. His back ached and his stomach grumbled from hunger. Like nightfall, he pondered how difficult this search had been. He was deeply tired, but in his soul burned a true, pleasant joy from gathering. A gentle smile blossomed on his face. He lay there completely satisfied. He was confident that his reviewing skills were the best, and imagined God proudly approving it. The next morning, Shu was still sound asleep in the bed at the end. He groaned, struggling with the blankets. His body still ached from yesterday. He suddenly sat up straight, suddenly filled with energy from the thought that new materials awaited him. As he was getting ready, he suddenly remembered. Today he would need a shovel. He paused for a moment in packing and picked up a small booklet from the table. When he remembered his promise to Chef Bando, a smile appeared on his face. He found a naked man in the kitchen who warmly greeted him. "Yo!" Bandele sincerely thanked him and offered the very special dish he had promised to prepare. Shu looked completely exhausted and apologized for his haggard appearance. Seeing him in such a state, the kind chef suddenly came up with a wonderful idea. He asked Shu to wait just a moment and returned to the counter. He handed over a beautifully wrapped bento box, a gift for Shu's lunch. Overwhelmed by this gesture, she burst into tears of gratitude and happiness. He sincerely thanked Bando and promised that it would help him give his all. He happily hid the bento in his bag, feeling how the cook's kindness restored his strength. Carefully, as if touching a treasure, he placed the precious lunch in his magic bag to keep it safe. With the bento from Bandele, he felt 100 times stronger, ready for the day. "I'm off!" he shouted cheerfully, once again moving away from the edge. He smiled, ready for any adventures the new day would bring him. He found himself by a calm lake and noticed how clean and clear the water was here. A pair of deer quietly drank water, a quiet sign that nature here was healthy. The lake shone like a mirror, reflecting the sky and a distant majestic mountain. He knew that the Yamadoro plant reached toward the water, so he began to look for it. First, he thought, preparing to use his observation skills. He shielded his eyes with his hand from the bright sun and carefully scanned the lake shore. He quickly noticed his target, a patch with characteristic heart-shaped leaves. The heart-shaped leaves gathered into a large, healthy-looking bunch. "Ah!" he exclaimed, glad that he found this place so quickly. He announced that now he only had to dig up that precious root below. He thrust the shovel into the ground and set to work, which was backbreaking. The ground was hard and rocky, and he barely managed to dig. He muttered, realizing that today's quest was a true test of endurance. He took off his jacket and placed it next to the bag. Wiping sweat from his forehead, he prepared to take on the hard work again. He dug a large hole, but was disappointed to find that the path was still hidden. He wondered whether he should dig even deeper to find his prize. The shovel hit something hard, and he knew he had made a terrible mistake. "I did it!" he exclaimed in despair, hearing the root crack. He desperately wanted to have at least some magic that would allow him to see underground. Suddenly, a brilliant idea struck him. Clairvoyance. He remembered how his surveying skill allowed him to see the outlines of materials. He wondered if this would allow him to draw a map of the root system itself. He decided it was worth trying and closed his eyes to concentrate. The surface of the calm lake shimmered under the bright sun. A ripple spread, symbolizing a wave of his magical energy. They aimed at Yamadoro. He ordered to release all his focused power. He gasped in pure amazement, seeing in his mind what appeared. Before his inner eye appeared a perfect shining image of the root system. He called his skill his master and prepared to dig with careful, almost surgical precision. He thinks that if everything goes smoothly, he will soon cope with this request. He glanced over the quiet lake landscape, pondering his next move. He remembers Bando's words, because he knows the feast after hard work has a special taste. He confidently utters the water ball spell, and a ball of water appears in the air. Sighing with relief, he notices that control over his magic is improving. His skill in surveying the area helped gather a pile of Yamadoro, but digging is a real dirty hassle. Now that he has finally pulled himself together, it's time for lunch. His eyes widen and seem to light up as he opens the bento box. He sees a thick, plump cage tightly packed with alkenko mushrooms that he gathered. Inhaling the aroma of cheese and mushrooms, he sincerely thanks Bando for the food. He takes the first bite. Pure, gustatory bliss blooms on his face. He freezes from the incredible aroma and savors the deep, rich umami of these mushrooms. He wolf's-towned the quiche, declaring Bandela a genius for this combination of flavors. He instantly devours this incredibly tasty dish. With the clatter of utensils, he said the food was delicious. Leaning back, he feels completely full and happy after the meal. He relaxes at the very edge of the water, enjoying the calm midday breeze. He jumped up, realizing he had almost completely dozed off. He suddenly remembers. There is still one material left on Klaus's list of requests. He clenched his fist several times, determined to find the last item by the end of the day. He walks along the path leading to the deeper and darker part of the forest. He notices a dim light, and feels that this is the perfect place for monsters to appear. He recalls Klaus's instructions about where the elusive karuru fruit grows. He fills with confidence, knowing his unique skill will protect him from monsters. He activates the scanning skill, focusing specifically on magical stones. The forest exploded with thousands of flickering signals, and a horde of monsters appeared before his eyes. Seeing so many monsters, he fears that completely avoiding them will be difficult. He picks up a signal from a fast, agile creature. Another signal. A huge, fierce-looking beast. Then his gaze stops on a slowly crawling signal, like a living caterpillar. He decides that of all the threats, the slow caterpillar is the easiest to bypass. His gamer brain warns, beware of poison from insect monsters. He carefully makes his way through the thickets, wary of being noticed. Finally, he found himself face to face with the creature he was tracking. The monster Kayape Bill is busily and contentedly chewing a huge leaf. He shudders, admitting to himself that he really does not like insects. He notices that the monster is so engrossed in the food that it hasn't noticed him yet. He thinks this is his chance to slip by unnoticed. His foot steps on a dry branch. It cracks loudly under his boot. In panic, he rushes to help, and the wary monster spits a stream of silk at him. He instantly ducks behind a sturdy, thick tree trunk. He realizes the monster is too slow to chase him and will simply give up. He sighs with relief as the monster turns away. Just as he predicted, he carefully examines the precious silk thread shimmering, tempted by the possible prize. He decides that his life is more important and runs away. Having run to a safe distance, he stops to catch his breath. Wiping sweat from his forehead, he feels that this new place is finally safe from monsters. He decides to use his observation skill once more, just to be sure. He swallows as the space fills with the glow of countless rare materials. Among such a pile of equally similar fruits, it is difficult for him to recognize his target. He strains to recall the drawing of the kururu fruit from Klaus's book. He decides to check his eye himself, rather than relying solely on his skill. He dismisses one fruit, too round and not the right color. Another one nearby, but he notices the leaves have the wrong shape. His eyes widen. Finally, he notices a plant that seems perfect. His evaluation skill confirms what it is and reveals its magical properties in detail. He triumphantly says he has found exactly that kareru fruit. He thinks about buying an encyclopedia, imagining how it would make gathering even more enjoyable. And now the real challenge: to breathe magic into the fruit and not let it explode. He feels confident. His control has become much better. He is sure he will not repeat past mistakes. The fruit suddenly exploded, and sticky juice splashed into his face. He is shocked. The fruit turned out to be incredibly tender, although he held it very carefully. He understands that Klaus's quest is a real trial, then licks the juice and feels that it is tasty. His determination has hardened, and he promised to grow fruits of the highest quality he is capable of. He spends the rest of the day diligently practicing gentle magic infusion. Two small creatures resembling fox cubs in the bushes seem to encourage him. Out of breath from the effort, he wonders if his last attempt finally succeeded. He shouts with pure triumph, seeing the perfectly glow-soaked fruit. Holding his last trophy in his hands, he is confident that Klaus will be pleased. He realizes that the fruit's magic is fading, so he must urgently hide it. When he was about to put away the fruits, he suddenly noticed something strange. He laid everything out in the hall and sees the first few fruits are smaller than the others. He is worried that Klaus will start grumbling because the fruits are different sizes. Deciding to postpone his worries, he heads back to the city as dusk falls outside. He feels that now he controls his magic much better. He walks through the forest thinking about how magic will make his work better. He is confident that this new control will make him a much better gatherer. Night falls, and he finally returns to Klaus's elegant house. He worries that if he arrives so late, Klaus will feel uncomfortable. He notices the warm light softly glowing from the attached greenhouse. Curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to approach and look at the light. He cannot get rid of the thought: is the pharmacist still in the greenhouse at this late hour? From the lush greenery of the greenhouse came a voice calling him by name. Klaus asks if he is not too late to inquire about this request. Shu smiles broadly and joyfully announces that he managed to gather all the materials. He explains that he came to make his last delivery. Klaus looked at him with complete disbelief, his jaw dropped. He grabbed Shu and, with a face blazing with anger, demanded to know how he finished a week-long quest so quickly. Klaus gathers his thoughts, sharply pushing his glasses up his nose. Still skeptical, the pharmacist insistently demands to see the collected materials. In his office, Klaus said he would first examine the delicate fruits of Kuru. He hurriedly wants to process them before their magic dissipates, but suddenly he remembers something. Shu cheerfully reassures him the magic bag will not let anything spoil. Klaus stops squinting. He understands what that Shu just showed. He sternly warns Shu, do not flaunt such a rare item so carelessly. He directly tells Shu that if he were a less reliable person, Shu would already be dead. Shu finally understands what enormous value and danger his bag carries. He remembered how Botan was just as stunned and realized how lucky he was in this small village. Shu bows deeply and sincerely thanks, and Klaus accepts it with a heavy sigh. Kluk decides to first examine other, less volatile materials. Klaus first decided to deal with simpler materials: Kikyo and Yamadoro. He carefully examines the samples, his face thoughtful and deeply focused. Kikyo has 3 petals, and the Yamadoro root is perfectly preserved. Shu sighed with great relief upon hearing that the materials passed the inspection. Klaus enthusiastically praises his skill on the first try, and Shu sincerely thanks him. Now he directs his attention to the most complex item: the Kururu fruit. Klaus's professional calm shattered. He gasped at the enormous size of the fruits. He had never seen anything so large and wondered how much magic was used. He understands. So much magic should have instantly torn it apart. Shu raises his hand, awkwardly preparing to explain something to the pharmacist. He admits that the first few fruits he picked actually turned out to be much smaller. Having displayed the entire batch, he sincerely apologized, saying their sizes vary. He is gnawed by anxiety. Their unstable quality makes them unsuitable as goods. Klaus looks at him and says that she was too kind a person. He does not allow the footwear to give away materials without reward just like that. She silently watches as Klaus tells him that he has far exceeded his expectations. He insists, "Be sure, otherwise you will be taken advantage of." Sho holds his breath and listens carefully as Klaus pauses before continuing. With an embarrassed look, Klaus admits that the cost of this fruit has simply skyrocketed. He admits Mom is beyond his means, 6 is his absolute maximum. Shu's Miles smiled and said that everything was fine. He intended to give them away anyway. Klaus got angry and harshly scolded Shu for allowing himself to be exploited too willingly. In the small tense panel, the pharmacist's prolonged irritation is felt. The final deal is made. Everything is decided. 7 kikyo, 3 yamadoro, and 6 kururu. Klaus hands over a heavy bag of coins to Cho's great surprise. He says the payment is fair. The work is worth it. Shu, overwhelmed by his own honesty, sincerely and gratefully says thank you. Klaus finishes the matter. The fragile materials must be preserved urgently. And then he remembered the last advice he so wanted to give. He suggests selling the remaining materials to the alchemist. They will pay better there. He tells Shu, "Keep this in mind, another option for your goods." Shu looks a little confused, but sincerely takes the pharmacist's advice to heart. The word alchemist echoes in his head and ignites a new idea. That night, under the crescent moon, he thinks about those mysterious alchemists. Leaning against the railing of his balcony, he looks thoughtfully and wonders what they are like in this city. He remembers them from games, how they created powerful potions from simple materials. His curiosity about the alchemists working in Granto has been sparked. The search leads him to a noisy shop on a busy city street. Inside, adventurers grumbled that potions had become too expensive. The shopkeeper says, "This is a necessary price for those who risk their lives." A stout man considers himself Mons, an alchemist from Grentel. He spends whole days selling his goods to local adventurers. He thinks to himself that adventurers, honestly, are just a bunch of idiots. Do they really buy his sometimes shoddy potions and not even ask a single question? He knows the only other alchemist in the city is a recluse, so adventurers are simply forced to buy his overly expensive potions. As soon as Shu enters, Mons thinks, here is another easy victim. Shu cheerfully asks the seller why his prices are so high. He also notes that he does not see any truly effective potions. Mons says it's all because there are almost no skilled material gatherers left. Then Shu suddenly offers to sell him some quality materials he has with him. Mons arrogantly asks to first see his guild registration. Shu calmly shows his rectangular guild plaque. Seeing that it is only F rank, Monskov immediately decided the footwear is a fake. The carefree Shu asks if he can now show him the materials. Mons puts on his glasses and prepares to inspect the young man's goods. He is completely stunned. The root Yamadoro is incredibly pure and perfect. He realizes that he can get rich and resolutely decides to obtain this money. She waits with a happy, expectant smile, impatiently awaiting the evaluation. Mons launches an attack of tricks, trying to deceive the young adventurer. He lies, insisting that the root has been spoiled since it was assembled. He explains that her value is rapidly collapsing every day. He extends bronze coins paltry 5, pretending to be generous. Shu's face darkens as he asks if such a price is really acceptable. He quietly hums, and it is clear on his face that he has noticed the deception. He calmly said that this is a shop that sells lies. He points to the low quality of the potions lined up on the shelves. Mons is shocked and begins to sweat. His greedy plan is exposed. Shu loudly declares that he, the collector, knows best the true quality of these materials. He turns around and walks away, resolutely saying that he will never return to that shop again. Mons froze stunned and stood silently, his face a mask of defeat. She walks away from the dishonest alchemist, leaving his work unfinished. Outside, he regrets having exploded like that and does not know what to do next. In his memory, Klaus's advice echoed, "Believe in your work." He finds it hard to believe that Klaus would recommend such a suspicious shop. He stops tormenting himself trying to remember what else he was told. He suddenly recalls another conversation, the one about the alchemist. Mina remembered the reclusive alchemist who lived on the western outskirts of the city. He knows the trip might be in vain, but he sets off anyway. He arrived in a quiet rural area where houses stand sparsely. He wonders if an alchemist really lives here, and suddenly notices a young girl. He approaches her with a smile to ask about the alchemist's shop. The girl turns around. His sudden question caught her by surprise. She asked if he had dealings with the alchemist. Immediately, she was struck by how incredibly sweet she was. He introduces himself as a traveler who skillfully engages in gathering. He continues and says that his specialty is collecting materials. He asks her to please look at his goods. Enthralled, he asked her to let him into her home. The girl laughs and introduces herself. Lumia, a student of alchemy. She was embarrassed when she realized his bold and false assumption. Lumia explains that he is lucky. Her master is a recluse. She confessed with relief that he was about to give up the search. He inquired how far the store was from their location. Lumia calmly informs him that they are already here. Suddenly, a majestic building appears before them. She calls it Safi's store. Shu stands in complete amazement. He cannot understand when this building appeared here. He anxiously asks Lumia why he still could not see the shop. He suddenly realizes that her master must have used magic to hide the store. Lumia shyly apologizes for her master's strange antics and invites him inside. Lumia fussily tries to correct her embarrassed facial expression. Shu enters and immediately sees there is some slight mess in the store. Lumia rushes past him, quietly calling him master and fool under her breath. Shu looked at the shelves. They were slightly dusted with dust. He notices that these potions are much better than last time. Sighing with relief, he felt that he had finally arrived at the right place. Lumia gently offers him to sit down and says she will go call her master. She returned with tea and cookies, and Cho was quite surprised. Lumia says with a smile that she baked the cookies herself. It's her hobby. She compares perfecting recipes to alchemy, and Cho finds it amusing. When she leaves, Shu nibbles the cookies, and they seem incredibly tasty to her. He swallowed the tea and thought that Safi must be a good person. In a minute, he happily ate his treat. After 5 minutes, he began to look around the room, patiently waiting. 20 minutes pass, and he slumps in the chair, bored and tired. Suddenly, he wakes up sharply. Lumia is calling him by name. She apologizes and explains her master caught a cold. She perfectly understands that this is just an excuse not to meet with him. He gets up to leave, saying that the tea and cookies were more than enough. Lumia asked him to wait and took it upon herself to evaluate his materials. Shu froze for a moment, looking at the young apprentice. She insists to him, "Don't worry that I am only an apprentice." She explains that since he came all the way here, and moreover, she really wants to personally see his materials. Her sincere request melted him, and he agreed. Lumia is delighted. She officially asked to show the materials he brought. Shu smiles says, "Whoever makes such delicious cookies must be a true master." He told her that he trusts her skills, and she sincerely thanked him. In front of the grand building, Lumia is tensely preparing for the evaluation. She asks you which exact materials he brought so that she can see them. He hands her a heavy sack filled with his finds. Later, Shu leaves the shop. Please keep in mind the generous amount she paid. He feels warm inside because she valued his materials so highly. He sincerely hopes that next time he will finally meet the master. Lumia whispers from inside to her master that the client has already left. She protests because she fears that her master will waste the new materials on training. Safi calmly tells her apprentice, "Don't be so angry." She says that a batch of good glowing moss has arrived from the guild. She says she doesn't care. Materials from adventurers are usually mediocre. Lumia asked with a dull thud if her master is really sure about this. Safi is shocked to hear that Lumia paid 11 gold coins for Caruero's fruits. She grabs her apprentice and shouts that the market price is only 5 gold. Lumia remains calm and simply asks her master to look at these items. Safi and Lumia freeze, eyes wide open, shocked by the materials shown to them. Lumia exclaims excitedly that she has never seen such giant fruits. Safia stands speechless. She explains that Yamadori's route was also perfect, a sign of a true professional. Safi, now serious, asked, "What is the name of this adventure?" Lumia is surprised by her master's sudden passionate interest. She tells her that the skilled adventurer's name is Shu. In Safi's memory, the guild report about the shining moss comes alive. It was written by Shu, rank F. She repeats this name to herself, eyes narrowed in thought. She happily goes home and thinks about what to prepare for dinner. In the tavern, adventurers grumble angrily that direct requests take all the work. One man with a smile brings up the very topic of direct requests. His friend Gossip chatters about a skilled adventurer who completes quests in record time. The first man mumbles under his breath, blaming this person for all his recent failures. Shu eavesdrops and wonders, what amazing high rank do they mean? In the Lapis Guild, with a sparkle in her eyes, she sincerely congratulates Shu on the promotion to E rank. He feels the road was long, but Lapis says, it's not that simple. She explains that rising in rank in just a month is an incredible achievement. Usually, she says, it takes at least half a year, or even more. Hugh understands that his work for Klaus has greatly boosted his reputation. Lepus smiles and asks if he would be ready to take on one more request. He was surprised by her serious tone and heavy expression. She explains that this is from one of only 4 alchemists of the highest class. She says that the request is from the same person, and it is a great honor for her. She quietly whispers that the guild cannot afford to anger such a client. Sho agrees to at least personally listen to the request. He suddenly found himself in the shop again, surprised that he returned so soon. Lumia meets him at the door with a bright, warm smile. He stands again before that exquisite building, hidden by enchantments. Lumia sincerely thanks him for coming and says that her master is waiting inside. Finally, he met the master alchemist Sophie full sadness. Safi coolly loudly announces that she was the one who asked for him. She stepped back and, stumbling, said a polite, "Nice to meet you." He bows deeply, but Safi tells him to sit. She hates formalities. With a serious look, she says that she must ask him about something. She asked if he remembers how he recently brought glowing moss to the guild. Suddenly, she was caught by a very specific question. Safi nods understandingly as Lumia approaches with tea and sweets. She tells him that she will now explain all the details of the request. She looks intently at him, a barely noticeable smile playing on her lips. She politely asked him to take care of his apprentice Lumia. Lumia froze and blushed at the strange words of her master. Sophie watches their reactions, a knowing look playing on her face. Lumia can only say her master's name once a week at best. Shu is completely confused by this incredible request. Suddenly, he jumps up and fervently vows to make Lumia happy. Safi holds his head in his hands and asks him to wait. Lumia protests, calls her master to stop and shouts, "Don't agree!" Safi laughed, taking it as a joke. She was amused by Shu's sincere reaction. Shu quietly muttered that he would manage if it were not a joke. Lumia begs her master to stop her silly jokes. Safi calmly tells her student not to be so angry. Shu and Lumia listen, still puzzled by what is happening. Safi explains that she wants him to gather 4 simple materials of the lowest rank. Shu asked, "Is that all?" But Safi replied, "There is one condition. The condition is that he must take Lumia with him." The strange request stunned both Shu and Lumia. They both froze in silence. Their simultaneous exclamations of disbelief echo from the alchemy shop. She froze in surprise. She was offered to collect materials together with the student Lumia. Master alchemist Safi from the other end of the room is watching them intently with cold, calculating eyes. Completely puzzled by this strange request, she immediately asks what exactly she means. With a graceful gesture, Safi begins to talk about the National Alchemist's exam. The exam is not limited to sheets. There are written tests, work with mixtures, and a live field exam where you have to gather materials yourself. Safi explains that Lumia, although knowledgeable, lacks important practical experience in real-world gathering. And so Safi officially asked Shu to become a feelings guide for Lumia during the test. Shu protests, not understanding why Safi, a top-class alchemist, does not teach her herself. Safi sincerely says that she is not very active. She rather draws knowledge in the silence of her room. Before Shu could further object, Lumia's voice sharply interrupted his protest. Lumia explains that seeing his perfectly gathered materials became a moment of deep inspiration for her. She passionately begs him to allow her to see with her own eyes how he gathers. Moved by her sincere request, Shu was left speechless. Safi coolly puts a full stop to the agreement and promises a generous reward for cooperation. She falls silent for a moment to consider this unusual but sincere request. Hearing his consent, Lumia's face blossomed with a radiant, joyful smile. She smiles and tells Lumia that they must strive together, to which Lumia gladly agrees. But when Shu turned around, he was suddenly gripped by a new, very practical concern. He says anxiously that, being a low-ranking enterprise, he cannot guarantee her safety. Lumia steps forward confidently and gently assures him that everything will be fine. She proudly lists how she can wield a sword and shoot a bow, assuring that she will not be a burden. Shu is shocked. He realized that the gentle apprentice might be stronger than him. Safi added that the necessary materials lie in safe places, so danger is unlikely. She enthusiastically praises his ability to avoid unnecessary fights, a true treasure for any adventurer. Cunningly smiling, Safi orders them to set out on the expedition the next morning. Lumia is glowing with excitement, and she agrees to the terms along with Shu. That evening, under the fading light, preparations for the journey began. In his room, Shu carefully packs supplies, not forgetting to take extra potions for his new partner. He recalls his past and suddenly realizes this is the first time in his life that he is working at a party. The thought of assembling his first team fills him with a strange excitement. He remembered the old gaming days, how together with others they hunted for materials. The memory of a shared achievement brings a satisfied smile to his face. He quickly dismisses nostalgia and reminds himself, focus on the mission. He resolutely takes on the task, because he knows that Safi has trusted him. The next morning, Lumia, fully prepared, meets him with a radiant, joyful smile. She will respond to the greeting, a little surprised that she has turned into a warrior. He notices a different aura in her, and she considers her equipment completely ordinary. Lumia notices that he is dressed as usual, and because of this he blushes embarrassedly. He clears his throat, preparing to defend his extraordinary choice of clothing. He proudly says that his rule at meetings is comfortable clothing, and this impresses Lumia. Still, he feels that next to her he looks much weaker. Casting aside his insecurity, he clenches his fist with new determination. Shu shows the direction, and they set off together towards the eastern forest.